And then you guys know the button to push on there, the one with the little person and the sound coming out of the mouth. So I think what we'll do for this is, you know, 5 to 10 minutes each, just kind of summarizing what your team talked about over the course of the morning. And with that, I think we'll just start on my immediate left, if you're okay with, unless you want me to start with Tweedy. You want me to do that? I could start on the other. Okay, we'll put Craig Tweedy on the spot and we'll make him start.
But that's not age before beauty, no.
I'm the oldest guy here, sorry.
All right, so just very quickly, we had some wonderful ideas for science questions. Just let me quickly go. These are in no particular order. I'm just going to ramble through them. How will climate change impacts interact or intersect with human health issues? The need for a more in-depth analysis of plant herbivore predator interactions, drawing on the history of the herbivory studies, population monitoring, quite clearly has management implications, etc. Need for the advanced research, promoting and testing or expanding on a proving ground for new technologies and techniques, that sort of thing. So more of an engineering capacity. How can changes in lakes serve as an integrated landscape change and changes in aquatic systems? How does climate change impact migration patterns? How can we build a research base that draws from the recommendations from various subsistence hunting groups? It's clearly with a focus on subsistence species, but also to include rarer or maybe unrepresented species in those groups. Just a general focus on research that I guess details subsistence species with a management approach, or use of a co-management approach, with more hunter and youth involvement. Clearly that is really well geared for that kind of research. We see various research, community-driven and community-responsive research, perhaps with a focus on zoonotic diseases, for example. How changes in the Arctic manifest in the coastal domain through land-ocean atmosphere connections, etc. And really throughout that, we also discussed building on participating in contributing to national to international scale networks. In terms of logistical support needs, this is where we basically finished up. So this here is fairly brief. The need for enhanced lab equipment, dry ice, making equipment, ice machines, balancers, cold rooms, freezers, etc. A lot of what we have now is at full capacity. Same can be said for lab and science space. So that's not only just sophisticated labs, but just general space to do things. Just empty rooms that could be flexible to all sorts of given needs, either from small conference rooms to spilling out equipment and putting things together. The need for a temporary or maybe workshop space that lasts for maybe 5 years or something like that, that is drive-through in nature and sort of semi-temporary. We also discussed the pros and cons of shared facilities and infrastructure, say, for example, between UIC Science and the North Slope Borough Wildlife. So that could enhance management of expensive items like boats and things like that. It was brought up that just the expense of housing is prohibitive to a lot of research. But if we take on the model of other field camps around the Arctic, but locally at Toolik Lake, for example, of including an area for camping or low-cost sort of shared tent-based sort of camping or glamping could be quite effective. And I think several times in this meeting the absolute need for effective and efficient and affordable family housing is fundamental. I think it's pretty clear that we need to put ourselves on the right side of history when it comes to such things. In terms of the fostering, the third question we addressed, fostering collaboration and knowledge co-production with a range of stakeholders. Again, we've got four philosophic students in our group, and really neat participation and ideas came from those folks. So really a shout out to them for a lot of these ideas. But clearly there's a lot of emphasis on forming long-term relationships and sort of including but not de-emphasizing I guess this mentality sort of for fly-in, fly-out science. And again, just offering design of infrastructure and supporting projects that will indeed support long-term relationship building with various entities here. We did discuss very briefly the potential or idea of potentially franchising the UIC science model to other communities around northern Alaska and indeed the Arctic. So the idea where communities could designate lands that are safe spaces for research that could also dovetail with carbon offsets and other sort of revenue building approaches for remote communities. We talked about the need for establishing an advisory or steering committee for local logistics providers. There's obviously a very big untapped energy, passion, willingness to give back from the science community and to build and strengthen those capacities for logistics moving forward. Had some interesting ideas about the potential for some kind of a representative on the ground to facilitate or brokering across different research agencies or research opportunities and sort of be a glue between existing projects on the ground. That was really neat idea, I thought. We highlighted the potential for the business potential of approaching countries or various entities that have been affected by the shutdown in the Russian Arctic and the capacity to do research there. So there is definitely an opportunity to attract those researchers to the local area, particularly if they dovetail well with existing efforts or can make use of periods of the year that are perhaps a little slow on the ground here, and there's excess sort of resource availability for logistic support, etc. Some really neat ideas, realizing more and more that some of the federally funded researchers are potentially not tapping into fish and game meetings. I apologize if I get the terminology here, but my understanding is that this would otherwise provide a synopsis and opportunity to glean some summaries of what was caught in different communities, what are the community needs at the village level on an annual, semi-annual basis. So that again could be a wonderful way to establish opportunities and share knowledge with more directly with smaller communities. And we raised the idea of the potential of an annual science meeting for the area that cross-sects multiple disciplines, potentially looks at the TULIP model for doing something similar to this, where sort of capstone science presentations of new discoveries are delivered, plans for upcoming field seasons are discussed, and the logistics requirements that are needed to pull off that research are also brought together. And lastly, just in general, the real lot of emphasis placed on promoting stronger engagement with the community and beyond. So increased use, effective use of social media, obviously with due care, and also enhancing sort of rebuilding of community events and that sort of thing post-COVID. So there's really an opportunity to kind of leapfrog efforts as we rebound from the COVID experience. So again, I apologize to my group if I missed anything there. Obviously, it's delivered in brevity. So if there's anything super important there, please don't hesitate to chime in and remind me what I forgot. But back to you. Thanks, Nat.
Thank you, Craig. And then I think, I don't know if you guys all know this, but you've all volunteered to help synthesize the document too at some point. So you'll have a chance to revisit the comments. that was, we called it a media release, but you're really signing up for something else. But I think we'll just move to the right. Thanks, Craig. And then we'll just keep going right to you there, Church. And I think we need to queue up your presentation. So 1 second.
Great. Okay. Well, first of all, as this presentation queues up, Craig, a lot of great reflections that you provided, can certainly wash through some of the reflections we had, and I'm sure that reflects through the entire 4 groups. Our group, I think, was without question, though, the most innovative, determined, and thoughtful group. We definitely had the very best note taker, Emily, who has our call sign now of Grizzly. She was the bomb and did a superb job, outstanding. So reflecting to, of course, we even have a group photo, multiple photos, because our group was so photogenic. So again, Emily, in fact, Emily, I just give you my personal round of applause. Well done, and everyone as well. Yeah. So we are going to take reframe the discussions from what was in the program about DoD perspectives. So we need to broaden the conversation. So we really wanted to take a look at some of the research needs across the developing defense and security landscape of the Arctic region. And so because of this, we took that very broad approach, and we have really a bumper sticker that perhaps broader is better when it comes to trying to understand the development concerns of research in the Arctic security arena. So our tremendous group of 20 folks that helped us put this discussion together. And I'm sure it washes across all the groups as well that, it was good to be highly constrained, but very, very bad to be highly constrained, because so many important discussions were underway. I said, having me the time here, but I would love to continue the conversation, but we got to move on. We do have, of course, this presentation is a snapshot of the paper we already got in pretty good form. I think something like 7 or 8 pages right now. Again, the best group on the panel here, and that's not for me. That's just because all the other folks I got to be with. You can throw rocks later, though. So strategically, we look at the key science questions that relates to the really developing defense and security landscape, and really looking at aspects of trying to realize, again, not unlike what was said earlier in the conference about Arctic science is 80% logistics, 20% science. Well, when we look at the security equation across the Arctic region, and really focusing on the U.S. Arctic region as a principal area of concern, thinking about what the impact of the changing climate is to defend and secure our national, state, and local interests. And then how much of this really relates to, the businesses of actually producing logistics, transportation, mobility, obviously resilient infrastructure to house and equip and house people and house equipment. And then something we really spent a lot of time trying to unpack in this aspect of cross-cultural communications. It's not just a science and an Arctic indigenous community. It's really, if you look at the disciplines, we had a lot of engineer folks in our group. So there was a language of engineering and math in there that was, really excluding to that of our colleagues from the biological sciences. So when we look at cross-cultural communications, we're looking at not only of our human composition and our ancestral backgrounds, but also aspects of the professional idioms in which we live. As an Air Force guy, I can't speak Army, for example, so there is a lot of business of how you communicate across different cultural barriers. And then we look at domain awareness. It's really about the business of, it's a bumper sticker, right? But the reality is that domain awareness is really a user-defined set of parameters. So we look at the aspect about how we get a domain awareness, especially when we look at characterizing a changing Arctic. I would say this really regarding from the spanning of geophysical to geostrategic. And as those changes manifest themselves over the coming, decades and beyond, how do we get this away that the user defines essentially their domain awareness needs that are relevant to their mission requirements? And then looking, of course, at the aspects of an Article 1 health, environmental, human, and animal health in this regards. And that's something that I know is being championed quite superbly at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We got two number ones here. Something happened. Any case, when we look at this, that the increased risks that are really driving part of the equation. In that, at the end of the day, we want to proactively be able to respond to crisis. And then again, when we think about security and defense, we're looking at the aspect that the nation, the United States and our allies and partners in across the Arctic region are not operating in a state of enduring peace. We strive for peace. We strive for a low tension environment. The community of Arctic science has been the leader of that, Pan-Arctic, for decades. Really, well, even during the Cold War, Arctic science cut across adversarial relationships in a way that brought unity of effort, at least in one domain. We are not seeing that right now as well, because ultimately the national decision-making and the need of our allies and partners in and around the Arctic region are responding to what's happening in Ukraine, the unprovoked, unwarranted, and really quite tragically profound invasion of the second time around of Ukraine by Russia has catastrophic effects on our ability to coordinate with our neighbors to the west. They're not going anywhere, and we're not going anywhere. How do we figure this out long term? But meanwhile, while we work to figure out long term, how do you deter and dissuade those who seek to threaten and challenge our national sovereignty or threaten our human citizens in this country? These are things when we think about fellow countrymen who live here. How do we protect and defend you in this kind of strategically complicated environment? So our end goal of addressing science is really to enable security. And then for us, and of course, this is cross-domain as well, that data has to be accessible. And there's a lot of, the world is filled with gatekeepers that don't let a flow of data flow. And then there's about 14 billion portals out there to look at. And I don't know about you, but I can only get to a portal at a time. I would love to find some way to be multitaskable in portals, but we're not there yet. At the end of the day, how do we work the communications piece across those cultural barriers? And then ultimately, we really think as a post-COVID world, which we're hoping for. We're not quite there yet, but we're hoping for it. How do we get to communications, reconstituting what we're working before, and then, as said during Cody's discussions, amp that up because the appetite is very much there. I was going to say next slide, but that's up to me. I'm not going to unpack these slides, but I'm saying we actually broke this down into question 2 of really looking at specific granular elements that needs to be accomplished. Not unlike what Craig had mentioned in his discussion. And from our vantage point, one thing is quite unique, though, that we thought is the need not only to have research that benefits the facilities and logistical needs, looking at this aspect that enables the research, but I'd like to zero in on workforce development. How do we grow the next generation? I'm looking at the next generation right here. You guys ready for the handoff? I'm getting ready to get tired and timed out, so you guys be ready to get that handoff and roll. Are we preparing you to be successful? What are we missing? And so for us, is it looking at this in specific, again, the granularity matters here. But I won't specifically address that, but it is certainly written in the slide. I'm now looking for kind of the way off the conversation and handing it over. We do want to support a UIC Science Community of Interest annual meeting and then more frequent conversations. I do put on the record, so twice now, so for 1 for Brendan, and of course 2 for you, but you already knew it because I already committed to you earlier. But the Stevens Center is your ready, willing, and able partner, sir, and I really tremendously mean that. Well, the reality is it's not just one little center, okay, because there's a whole community out here, but we need to come together to really keep this conversation going and not make it so episodic that it's like, wasn't that really great, that great conversation? Kudos to you to task us to do a report. Because then actually we had all collectively put skin in the game for that. And so strategically for us, we want you to know that a roadmap approach of what does the future look like is probably a pretty darn good thing to think about it. Multi-discipline, community of science roadmap is something we can give as our quote big idea. And there's more to written report. It's in there, like Breakout, tomato sauce. So our contributors, our team was great. Emily was just simply awesome. And we had great folks that were talking. My co-lead, my brother John Woods, headed Park for the airport. And I'm now finished.
Awesome.
8 minutes, sir. Sorry.
Good by me. You're not holding up dinner as much as I feel like I did today, but thank you, Church, for that. And then we'll just keep moving to the right and we'll move on to you, Athena.
Lovely, thank you. We did prepare a couple slides, and I wanted to say thanks to all of the folks that contributed to our breakout group number 3, Arctic Systems Science. And we will not be able to compete with Church and John's team and your beautiful presentations. So well done, kudos. I think what became apparent really quickly in our discussions was that we were not going to create key science questions. The majority of our discussion centered around actually somewhat more meta questions about relationship building and process. And similar to Church's group, we have a massive document full of thousands of words. So I won't walk through every single question that we came up with on each of the slides, but I will say it wasn't so much about science questions, it's about the process of how we address the questions, understand the relevant perspectives, and encourage everyone to be involved. So we came up with a couple questions that I'll just share. How do we create a collaborative, holistic approach to asking new research questions that are relevant to science, Indigenous communities, and to creating a resilient future? And how do we involve all the different knowledge holders, stakeholders, and then actually leverage the different platforms, not only concentrating with NSF, they've been a huge influence and a huge support, obviously, to Arctic Systems Science, but there are so many other organizations and institutions that are equally as interested in being involved and want to contribute to creating these new outcomes. For facilities and logistical support needs, we again have a really long list, and there's a lot of overlap with what's already been said, so I don't necessarily think that we need to go through each and every single one of these bullets, but there were a couple that I thought were really intriguing. One of them was, as new icebreakers come online, commercial icebreakers, we had a recommendation to be able to use them to conduct science on those platforms. So this is more of a wish list. This is an ideal world type scenario. This is something that we would hope to strive for. We were also recognizing the urgent need for cost-effective and robust telecommunications between private and public sectors. Of course, lots of conversations about improving relationships and communication. So improved relationship between research infrastructure and regional human health infrastructure. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for that one, since I'm between you and dinner anyway. For the last question regarding collaboration and co-production, Jackie Catalina Schaefer, she had to run to catch her flight home, but she set us up with this last question to make a recommendation of incorporating the values of listening, hearing, observing, as well as speaking up, debating, and questioning. She noted the differences between Western science community or culture and Indigenous culture, and how there's often this tension between the way Indigenous communities foster their values, and it often has much more to do with reciprocal relationship building, listening and observing, than it does with speaking up and speaking out. So bridging that tension and making sure that it's being honored in a way that's respectful and meaningful. Another recommendation that came out of this final discussion is similar to what's been said already, but building a core of what we were calling human bridges, people that can go back and forth between agencies, communities, researchers, and sustain an ongoing conversation between all of these groups. And again, we don't need another portal. We don't need any more maps. I think we need funding and sustained support for human people, actual people, to build these relationships and these organizations in a way that's living and evolving and responsive to community needs and research needs as well. I think I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. We did not get through adding all of our group members, so thanks for your patience with our less than stellar slide development, but thanks for listening, and thanks to the group members that contributed to the conversation today. It was wonderful working with you.
Thank you, Athena, for that. And then just for the record, the group pictures were not required. So I think assignment passed 100%. We're good.
Overachievers, I see.
So next we'll move down to my right, not down necessarily, to you, Kim, and we'll get queued up. Unless it's, you got to queue it up, or is it part of it? Oh, awesome.
Yes, it should be. Yeah. Yep. Those are definitely the ones. Yeah. One and all. While our slides get queued up, our team is the physical sciences team. Obviously, they've saved the best for last. Things are gone first. But we had very lively discussion. Our brainstorming session yielded about 18 different things that we were interested in. I have no interest in saying all 18 to you, so we're going to be sticking with those top 5, and we're actually even going to limit it down from there. Our team did a fabulous job. We were obviously the best, and I'm just going to keep rambling here because I'm competing with him down on my left. Okay, here we go. Our note taker was Stephanie, and she was amazing. All right, so like I said, we started off with 18 key science questions, which we merged into 5 key priority research areas. This essentially goes into drivers and key impacts of changing land-ocean interfaces, responses to rapid climate change, specifically looking at adaptation and mitigation. Stephanie brought up a really good point, is like, what is actually going to be here in a matter of decades? Like, what is coastal erosion going to be taking away from us? The third one was impacts of environmental change on health. We were really focused on human health. So what are the risks when it comes to people's health that actually live here? Next, we had the land-ocean transfer and interaction. So what is leaving the land, making it out to the ocean, vice versa. This includes salination of local groundwater resources. And how do we monitor that and then make the information available for everybody? And the fifth one is really important. How do we take observations and analyses that are conducted here in Utqiagvik, and how do we scale them to the greater North Slope, Burrow, and the Arctic beyond? We found that for the infrastructure needs and the community co-production, we could really kind of make a framework just focusing on one exemplary priority research area. So I'm going to be focusing all of these on the example of the land-ocean interface, but they kind of all end up in the same category of things that we need and things that we would like to do better. So in regards to facilities and logistical support needs, spatial distribution of hubs and sites. So really making sure that we have a wealth of locations covered in terms of monitoring and infrastructure. Actually, the energy and the data communication, getting out to all of these sites for a wide distribution was important for our group. Next, we had marine research needs. So we felt like the far offshore was better characterized in these coastal environments. So really having things like vessels that were capable and safe to operate in the coastal zone that were located here and stayed here that researchers could use. Looking at different autonomous platforms. So for example, wave gliders capable of operating in the coastal zone. And expanding research crews and transfer opportunities within Utqiagvik. And furthermore, something that we thought was very important is that if you're going to be introducing new infrastructure, such as boats, drones, heavy machinery operations, that the science funders really kind of put the money where the mouth is and make sure to spend the extra money for those to be decarbonized and weatherized. infrastructure. So for example, electric vehicles, hybrid boats, things like this. Next, we had capacity building and sharing at the community scale. So working on workforce development, working in conjunction with different local groups to train everybody in how to do these very technical skills. For example, drone pilot operation, right? There's a certification for that. Like this should be something that researchers can help instigate so that we have people that are knowledgeable about the area trained at the ready to go. Also to have a cooperative framework developed to kind of take NARL and UIC and scale it up to other parts of the North Slope Borough, because things are done really nicely here through UIC Science. Kudos to them for being amazing, but being able to also interact with different more remote communities across Alaska in a similar framework would be exciting, really kind of holding this up as a model. And for question number 3, our collaboration and co-production, the way forward. These were the aspects that we felt were particularly important. Having permanently located community-based liaisons, so actually having a person who is employed full-time here on the ground, you know, a real member of the community who serves as that interface for scientific organizations. People brought up FEMA, people brought up DOE and stuff. And we have a lot of really wonderful people here, and just making sure that we continue to keep this permanent presence and people employed to be those community liaisons for us. Workforce development, which we mentioned before, to be able to man, support, troubleshoot, operate all of the infrastructure for the science. Supporting community-based organizations. So rather than having funding come from a funder and go to a researcher and then expect the researcher to be the best person for the education and outreach, instead kind of, you know, sliding around that middleman a little bit and really getting the money directly to the communities who are going to be so much more efficient when it comes to actually getting the science out there and knowing who to talk to and knowing how to talk to people. This is just really important. And I think funding agencies are really starting to get the message and make that more approachable for us. Involving students in K-12. So we know that there is, you know, high turnover at some schools when it comes to teachers. We're really making sure that there's this permanent legacy that happens where we always know that science can come into the K-12 classroom before people even end up in college, getting the science in there and getting people passionate about all of the different aspects of physical science research happening here. And we saved this one for last because we kind of thought that, you know, all of these different collaboration and co-production ways forward were amazing, but if we don't have a set space for everybody to just like come hang out and talk story about the knowledge sharing and the science that's happening. People brought up this cafeteria model. So just making it a place where we can all get together, you know, rather than like a scientist coming here to the high school and then making people come to us, like, you know, maybe we could really get people all together and like fill an auditorium. So it's someplace where it's relaxed and less formal and everybody can come and go as they please and chat about whatever they're doing and how it matters. So yeah, science communication, co-production, and our team was amazing. We have all of their names listed right here. They all were wonderful. Can't say anything better about them. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kim. I'm not going to attempt to synthesize all of that information and provide a comprehensive summary at this point, but I promise you over the next few months, I will be assigned plenty of writing assignments to do that in the document that we go to create. But one thing that I did notice as all of you were speaking is everybody had a different approach to how they went about the assignment this afternoon. I don't know that that was by design, but I appreciate that that's how it went. Kind of outlines, it highlights the kind of the different personalities and different ways people go about doing things. And I think that we need to remember that as we go forward and develop these documents and come up with something and a plan forward lots of good ideas, communication outreach, something that's big for UIC science should be big for the state. And I know that it's big for the research community, but the facilitation is sometimes a challenge. Meeting space is a good point. You know, we're trying to do that. Unfortunately, we've got separate housing facilities, but awesome reflections, really good job. I appreciate the hard work of all of you as well as the entire team. And I wish the rest of the folks were able to be here so we could thank them as well. We will do our best to take all of the information that you guys have provided us and put that down into a document that we can then use to keep the conversation going forward. And not just talking about it, but making sure that we have actions that come out of all the conversations that we have. I don't like just talking and then coming back next year, as Church said, and talking again. Next year, we're going to talk about or over the next few years, we'll talk about the document that we have created from this one and hopefully update it as we go along and then get more into those facilities discussions and see what we could build to try to alleviate some of the stresses that we've identified today. So big round of applause for you guys. Big round of applause for all of you as well. Thank you.